All right. We are now live streaming on Facebook as well. Great. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. On behalf of USAID Feed the Future and AgriLinks, I want to welcome you to our webinar, The U.S. Government's Approach to Reducing Food Loss and Waste. I'm Michael Saltz with AgriLinks, and before we begin, I just want to orient you to our Zoom event. On the bottom of your screen, you'll see most of your controls. Please use the chat to introduce yourself and network with colleagues from around the world. To ask questions, please use the Q&A button in the toolbar on the left and indicate who your question is for. You can ask questions throughout the event, and our Q&A session will be at the end of the webinar. Lastly, we are recording this event and will email you the post-event resources, including the slides, as soon as they're available. You can find the resources at agrilinks.org when they are ready. Thank you for your attention. I will now pass it to Jocelyn Brown Hall, FAO Liaison Office for North America.
Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate it. Good morning to everyone. For those of you who are not in Washington, D.C., we are on our fourth day of rain due to Tropical Storm Ophelia, and it is very dreary here. So without further ado, I'm honored to be here, to have been invited to participate on this panel of distinguished U.S. government speakers to discuss this topic, which is very dear to both me and to the organization that I represent, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And that topic is food loss and waste. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jocelyn Brown Hall. I'm the director of FAO's Liaison Office from North America, covering the United States and Canada. We're based here in Washington, D.C. Our presence, our collective presence here today, reflects the paradox of abundance and scarcity, and furthermore displays our shared commitment to work across divisions and sectors to confront one of the most pressing challenges of our time. FAO, my organization, our statistics predict that a third of all food produced is lost or wasted. Not only does this represent a tremendous economic loss to producers and entire economies, especially those that are based in agriculture, but it also exacerbates issues of food insecurity and environmental sustainability. In our 2023 State of Food Security and Nutrition report that we do annually, FAO estimated that 735 million people suffered from hunger, and a shocking 3.1 billion people in the world, or 42%, were unable to afford a healthy diet. Meanwhile, according to FAO's State of Food and Agriculture report, another one of our Outlook reports, around 14% of the world's food, valued at $400 billion per year, continues to be lost after it is harvested and before it reaches commercial markets, while a further 17% of food is wasted at households, food services, and in retail. Innovative solutions around food packaging and food storage can maintain the quality, safety, and nutritional value of food products, meet consumer needs and preferences, reduce food loss and waste, and reduce the cost of nutritious food, especially along longer distribution chain. Food loss and waste also accounts for 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions, contributing to an unstable climate and extreme weather events such as drought and flooding. I noted we are having Tropical Storm Ophelia right now. In fact, to further highlight this impact, FAO numbers suggest that if food waste were a country, it would be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases. Of course, these changes negatively impact crop yields, potentially reduce the nutritional quality of crops, and cause supply chain disruptions. These figures are a call to action that resonates clearly with all of us here today. The 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development, specifically Sustainable Development Goal, or SDG 12, Target 12.3, calls for halving per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer levels and reducing food losses along the production and supply chains. Target 16 of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, launched this past December in 2022, among other issues, also calls for halving global food waste by 2030. Reducing food loss and waste is an important step toward transforming agri-food systems to contribute to the achievement of the 2030 Agenda. Reducing food loss and waste will require collective action to scale up efforts, which is why, ahead of the International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste on September 29th, this Friday, I'm pleased to be joined today by a unique panel of distinguished experts comprised of representatives from my former employer, U.S. Department of Agriculture, the U.S. Agency for International Development, the Food and Drug Administration, and the Environmental Protection Agency. Their presence and their experts' presence here is a testament to the gravity and multidisciplinary nature of the issue at hand, as well as the collaborative effort that is required to address it. These agencies all play a pivotal role in shaping policies and programs that influence our food systems, both domestically and internationally, and their insights and expertise are invaluable as we navigate the complex issues of food loss and waste. I extend my sincere gratitude to our esteemed panel of experts and hand you over to the floor for this important discussion. Thank you very much, Michael. I see people are putting their names into the chat. I hope you can introduce yourself. And I see a lot of different people from different places. So make sure that you do that. I want to turn over to my first guest. I believe there is a screen that introduces everyone, but if you can't see that screen, my first guest is Abla Kablan, Senior Science Advisor, USAID Bureau for Resilience and Food Security. Thank you so much, Ahmed. Over to you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Ahmed Kablan, Senior Science Advisor at the Bureau for Resilience and Food Security. Next slide, please. Next. Why USAID deal or worry about food loss and waste? For USAID, we are looking at addressing food loss and waste is a triple wins in economic development, climate, and nutrition, food security. For nutrition and food security, next, globally, a third of all food produced is lost and wasted, as Jocelyn mentioned. Every year, even if we have 800 million people live hungry every year. Food loss and waste decrease the amount of food available and is a missed opportunity to deliver needed calories and nutrition to food insecure population. These losses equate to 1 out of every 4 calories intended for human consumption being lost, enough to feed 2 billion individuals. Just a 25% reduction in food loss and waste across the world would decrease the food calorie gap by 12%. And climate and adaptation and mitigation. A 2023 summer was, or this year, as Jocelyn mentioned, bidded with a crisis, but also was one of the hottest summers. And most likely, it will be one of the coldest summers that we witness in our lifetime. When food rots, it emits methane, a powerful greenhouse gas with 84 times the warming potential than carbon dioxide over 20 years. As a result, food loss and waste contribute to approximately 10% of all greenhouse gas emission. The UNEP, United Nations Environmental Bureau, estimate that food loss and waste associated with methane emission near 50 million metric tons every year. UNEP estimate that additional measures like shift to renewable energy, residential energy, commercial energy efficiency, and reduction of food loss and waste can collectively reduce methane emission by 15% by 2030. Recent modeling showed that we will not achieve the 1.5 and the 2 degrees Paris Agreement target unless we change the way we produce, process, and consume food. Transforming the agriculture food system is critical to meet the 1.5 and the 2 degrees temperature target. The author notes that even the absence of dietary change, achieving either high yields, high agricultural efficiency, or a 50% reduction of food loss and waste alone could meet the 2 degrees limit, as could the partial interventions or approaches to achieve these targets. Increasing economic development, food loss and waste negatively impact countries' economies, with approximately $1 trillion worth of food is lost globally, with 4 billion lost annually in sub-Saharan Africa alone. A recent USAID-funded IFPRI study found that achieving SDG 12.3 by having food loss and waste would increase GDP by 3 to 5%, while decreasing poverty, unemployment, and hunger in Bangladesh, Kenya, and Nigeria, respectively. Next. At USAID, we are approaching food loss and waste intervention from two sides for research and development, private sector partnership. In research and development, the main objective under this work stream is to identify gaps in our knowledge and technologies needed to accelerate the global agenda to cut food loss and waste by 50%. This range from addressing pre-harvest issues such as plant and animal health, predicting and anticipating emerging animal and plant health diseases that could lead to damaging effect on agricultural productivity, to research to develop resistant seed on seed resistant to diseases, climate impacts. We are also looking at post-harvest issues, identifying bottlenecks to adoption technologies that reduce post-harvest losses, identifying where post-harvest loss occur, at which stage, for example, does the majority of it happen at the drying or the storage stage, in each value chain per country, or where the majority of food loss and waste happen. And that could help direct the resources that are, as we all know, limited resources to address post-harvest loss or food loss and waste. Research on behavioral science, such as behavioral economics, to alter consumers' behavior and attitude toward food as a major part of food waste occurs at the consumer level, as Jocelyn indicated. Studies to identify the cost-benefit analysis of various interventions to reduce food loss and waste or manage food waste are critical to identify the most cost-effective approaches. USAID research investment in food loss and waste were announced during the 2021 United Nations Food System Summit. A $60 million over 5 years investment included the support for the innovation labs, which are Feed the Future research program. The U.S. government, Feed the Future is the U.S. government initiative to end global hunger and improve food security. Example of our research work, which I highlight in the next couple of slides. Next. The Food the Future Innovation Lab for Horticulture Research, which is led by UC Davis. The approach looking at locally led priority setting for research incorporating post-harvest losses, management to reduce food loss and waste. Regional focus and led research agenda in West Africa, East Africa, and Central America. In West Africa, they are looking at improving affordability and availability of healthy diet. In East Africa, they are looking at intervention to reduce post-harvest losses and enhance marketing and market access of vegetables. Central America determined the appropriate technologies for climate-smart technologies to reduce post-harvest losses. Next. As you can see, and this is just more of a flow chart for their interventions, and this is where the areas they are looking to identify food loss and or bottlenecks or areas to address food loss and waste. Next, the research will address or will leverage on previous post-harvest loss technologies and research innovation developed by the previous Horticulture Innovation Lab and others innovations, such as the dry card, which is a simple technology that costs about 25 cents. You put it in the produce or in the grains, and that will tell you, you put it in the seed, that will tell you the moisture content of the seed. Also, they're looking at evaporative cooling chambers, at air dryers, solar dryers, in order to achieve reduction on post-harvest losses and increase shelf life. Next slide. The second innovation lab is the Food System for Nutrition Innovation Lab, which is led by Tufts University. They conducted a scoping study looking at innovation available to reduce pre- and post-harvest losses. Out of the 276 innovation that they reviewed, they were prioritized. 222 innovation had evidence of implementation around food loss and waste. Most of these innovation are either a product or technologies compared to processes, policies, standard or practices focused on consumer behavior or retail promotion. That they looked at, they are looking at identifying also where is our knowledge gap. We have a knowledge gap in behavior change or policies that will support food loss and waste reduction. Next slide. The Food System for Nutrition Innovation Lab developed a methodological framework to enhance technology adoption to reduce food loss and waste. A single innovation yields incomplete gains, as they found. What they found also, a bundle of core and complementary innovations are commonly needed to achieve a net impact and broad-scale result. The research questions that are being addressed revolve around actions to support storage, packaging, and or cooling innovations of perishable foods in target geography. The research typical areas within the same theme include the following areas. The first, research topical area or theme, policy action to enable scaling of innovations on food loss and waste and improve food safety and nutrient-dense food. Research topical area 2, business models and strategies for delivery of innovation at scale. And finally, research topical area 3, determining the cost effectiveness of innovation bundling that minimize food loss and waste and improve food safety and for nutrient-dense food. Next. The next innovation lab, which is part of the 60 million commitment that US government announced in 2021, is the current and emerging threat to crop innovation lab led by Penn State University. Next slide. The innovation lab, for example, is looking at ways to reduce food loss and waste in mangoes and other fruits. For example, they are looking also at how we can prevent food waste from industrial byproduct. As an example, they are looking at development of protein baits that are made from brewery waste that has showed a great potential to trapping the mango fruit fly. And that is a way to reduce food loss and waste in mangoes, but at the same time, reducing the waste or finding a useful application of brewery waste. They also are looking at market-led solution, for example, scaling parasitoid production for sustainable, effective management for fall armyworm. And we all know the story of the fall army, or remember the fall armyworm outbreak that led to significant and damaging effect on food security in sub-Saharan Africa and globally. Next. The Innovation Lab also looking at ways to turn waste or trash into money. And that is looking at development of biochar from invasive weed species and viral infected crops. The benefit of biochar is that it can bring money from credit market by sequestering carbon, and it is one of the longest well-proved and scientifically proven way to sequester carbon for a long period of time, reduce soil-borne pathogen, replace synthetic fertilizers that will save costs from fertilizer and nitrogen oxide, and improve soil health as well as increase water holding capacity. Next, on the private sector partnership, we have established so far, or we awarded 2 grants. The first one with Kintaste, and this partnership will bring or leverage around 1.3 million from private sector. USAID established the Food Loss and Waste Partnership Facility under the Food Loss, the Feed the Future Market System Partnership that managed by DAI. It is a one-to-one co-investment with companies in food loss and waste substandard countries that to increase the uptake of scaling and technologies and management practice to reduce food loss and waste with an emphasis on nutrition or a nutritious product and emphasis on youth and women-led enterprise or majority employing enterprises. The climate outcome, especially methane abatement, will be calculated based on the amount of food loss and waste mitigated, including food waste not ending up in landfill as a secondary advantage of addressing food loss and waste. Kintaste, for example, it is a coconut processing company in Kenya. It is a small medium enterprise, has 50% of women in leadership position and employing about 80% of their staff are women or youth. The work will create a new product line that's otherwise going to waste, coconut water. Currently, they don't have a use for coconut water and usually it end up in waste. With the new partnership, they will save around 2,500 liters of coconut per day. In Tanzania, Chanzi is an eco-agriculture company that uses black soldier fly to convert organic waste into high-protein animal feed and organic fertilizers. Will partner with a sister company, Okata Waste Management, and will expand its operation at the source of collection pilot from 3 to 15 wards in Arusha, Tanzania. The estimated they will manage up to 36 metric tons of organic waste daily, diverting up to 60% of Arusha household organic waste from landfill. By the end of the 2-year partnership, Chanzi will expand its waste separation and collection pilot to cover approximately 97,500 households and upcycle 36,000 or 36 tons of organic waste per day. We are currently also finalizing 3 more partnerships that are under development in Kenya, Tanzania, and Nigeria. Additionally, we announced the second round of food loss and waste call for application for partnership with private sector have closed, and we are now in the process of finalizing the review process for this partnership. We are hoping to award anywhere between 8 to 12 new public-private partnership with these companies. Next. The work to address food loss and waste is not limited to our work in Washington, D.C. or funded by Washington, D.C. As I mentioned, we have what we call a food loss and waste substandard countries, and these countries are USAID mission that signed a memo of understanding, recognizing food loss and waste as a major development challenge. One of those countries is Tanzania, and is our star team and our star upstandard country. They recently awarded USAID Chakula or Tafedi Chakula, which is Let's Save Food activity in Tanzania, a 5-year, $24 million activity co-created with local private sector partner, Tanzania Horticulture Association. Overall, the activity will contribute to reducing post-harvest losses from 40 to 15% in horticulture and from 13 to 7% in cereals. Next. Finally, for food loss, we created food loss and waste management, knowledge management tools in order to support our effort, as well as to provide bite-sized information to our partners and our colleagues in the field. The first one is USAID Kitchen Sink podcast, which is available on major podcast platform. And we have produced so far around 15 episodes. We will have an episode that will be released on 29th. Stay tuned with our colleagues from FAO. And this is provide bite-sized knowledge and information, sharing interviews with experts in food loss and waste field, and to share about practices and or knowledge or data gaps that we know about. And if any of the audience is interested in being interviewed by and they have special technologies or special topic they want to discuss, please reach out to USAID. Also, we established a food loss and waste community of practice, which is composed of academia, government, donors, philanthropists, the private sector, as a way to share knowledge and also to share opportunities and identify ways to collaborate between the different sectors to address food loss and waste. And finally, we established what we call the food loss and waste substandard mission, which I mentioned previously. Next. Thank you. If you want to learn more, please follow us on USAID Kitchen Sink. You can listen to episode there and contact Reduce Food Loss and Waste at usaid.gov for an information. Thank you. Over to you, Jocelyn.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And what I loved about this presentation was the breadth of the solutions. It could be biochar, it could be repurposing waste from other products that we made. You talked about the coconut water. There's a lot of different solutions out there, and it can be tailored to different countries and different commodities. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over to my colleague from the Environmental Protection Agency, Lana Capolino Suarez, who is the Associate Chief in the Materials Management Branch at EPA. So Lana, can I turn it over to you, please?
Sure. Thank you, Jocelyn. And thank you, Ahmed. That was a great presentation. I'm really happy to be here with my other federal colleagues. I'm Lana Suarez. I lead the Sustainable Management of Food work at the Environmental Protection Agency. Thanks again for inviting me to participate in this event and share with you some of our reducing wasted food work. Today, I'm going to provide some background on food waste in the United States, touch on the national goal that we have, and share EPA's work as it fits into a few different categories of prevention, increasing the recycling rate of organics, and enhancing policies. Next. Okay, so a little bit about what's going on in the US. This is not just a US issue. This is certainly a global issue, but I can speak about some of the statistics related to the United States. It's estimated that 30 to 40% of all available food is wasted, and there's a huge opportunity for improvement here. EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, estimates that over 66 million tons of wasted food was generated in 2019. Those are our most recent estimates, and we're working on updating those. But right now we have 2019, and almost 40 million tons went to landfills. Food is the single most common material found in our landfills in the United States. And where is it coming from? As you can see here, a significant portion of that waste is from households, and more than half comes from restaurants, food service, supermarkets, wholesalers, and other sources. And we have these figures and others in our 2019 wasted food report, which I'll mention again in a little bit. Okay, next. In September of 2015, so a number of years ago, the 2030 food loss and waste reduction goal was announced by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and EPA. And since we announced that goal, EPA aligned the interpretation of the food waste part of the domestic goal with the International Sustainable Development Goal Target 12.3, which was also set in 2015 and was the inspiration for that domestic goal announcement. Next. Now, a little bit more on EPA's approach. Our work focuses on accelerating the prevention of food waste and the recycling of organic waste by preventing the wasting of food across the supply chain from farm to fork and improving equitable access to healthy, nutritious food. We also want to increase the recycling rate of organic waste and enhance those policies to support prevention and increase recycling. Next, I'll talk a little bit more in depth about each of these focus areas. While increasing the recycling of organic material is critical, at least 85% of GHG emissions from landfilled food waste happened before waste disposal due to the resources that go into producing, distributing, and retailing that food. This is why we are really focused on prevention and why it is the most preferred intervention or action. Next, I'll talk about one of our recent products. We released a new toolkit this year, and this toolkit assists communities wishing to engage their residents on reducing wasted food in their homes. It uses principles of social marketing. If you're not familiar with social marketing, it's a discipline that seeks to change behaviors for the good of society, communities, and people. And it builds on a significant base of research that shows awareness and education alone rarely changes behavior. So in this toolkit, we include a guide and customizable campaign materials for downloading. It's all available for anyone who is interested. The prevention toolkit includes files from a number of different communities who had their own campaigns. So it's a new resource. We got this feedback from our partners and stakeholders, and we are making it available for everyone that wants to start a community campaign about the prevention of food waste. Next. Another area of focus is increasing the recycling rate for organics, because even when we prevent as much as possible, we will almost always likely be left with some inedible scraps to manage. Next. And recycling organic waste such as food scraps and yard trim requires the appropriate infrastructure to be in place. We can do as much collection as we want, but if it has nowhere to go and nowhere to process it, it's just a collected pile. So we need somewhere for it to go. And the bipartisan infrastructure law provided funding to the EPA to support state and local waste management infrastructure and recycling programs, which includes organics. So we developed two new recycling programs, the Solid Waste Infrastructure for Recycling Grant Program and the Recycling Education and Outreach Grants. We also in the past received appropriations to support anaerobic digestion in communities. And we didn't receive recent funding specifically for anaerobic digestion, but projects focusing on that topic would be eligible under our new grant programs. Next. More specifically, we released the funding opportunities for the solid waste infrastructure and improvement grants at the end of 2022 and earlier this year. And we've now been able to announce the organizations across the country that have been selected to receive over $105 million in grant awards in our first round. So for this topic and this presentation, what is significant here is that even though this is about recycling infrastructure, of the total amount awarded, $44 million will support about 33 projects that include activities related to organics recycling, composting, or anaerobic digestion. And we intend to announce the results of the other grant programs, the recycling education and outreach, and the grants specific for tribes and intertribal consortia later this year. So a lot of funding will be dedicated to this work. Next. And then just a little bit on data and measurement. I mentioned some of those statistics earlier about food being wasted in the United States. Those are all captured in our 2019 Wasted Food Report. It estimates how much food is wasted, generated, and managed nationally. Again, about 66 million tons of food waste is generated in the food retail, food service, and residential sectors in 2019 in the United States. And we also have an anaerobic digestion data collection report that summarizes data received from 3 types of anaerobic digestion facilities: standalone, on-farm, or digesters at waste resource recovery facilities that co-digest food waste. So all of this information and reports are available on our website for anyone who's interested. Next. Another tool that may be of interest is our excess food opportunities map. This map identifies and displays information about potential generators of excess food across the industrial, commercial, and institutional sectors. We have a new version 3.0 of the map, which adds additional layers from our EJ Screen tool related to environmental justice, and also added some layers from USDA's Food Environment Atlas. So we have a newly updated tool that many partners find really useful to drill down to the local level to create customizable maps. Next. And if this slide looks familiar, it should. It's the second of the 2 social marketing toolkits that we developed this year. This toolkit is similar to the food waste prevention toolkit, but for composting campaigns. Again, it contains customizable materials that anyone can use and is available now on our website. Like that prevention toolkit, the guide uses the principles of social marketing to assist communities in launching a campaign. In particular, it aims to assist communities that may be launching a curbside or community collection program for the first time, increasing participation in a current program, or decreasing contamination in their materials to create a cleaner finished compost product. Next. And then just a word on research. Through the sustainable management of food, we can help businesses and consumers save money, improve community networks for those who do not have enough to eat, prevent pollution, and conserve resources. Research and development of new science-based solutions are essential to meeting these objectives. EPA has several publications and hosts a webpage dedicated to food waste research. And one I want to highlight is the one on the right with the blue title, From Farm to Kitchen: Environmental Impacts of U.S. Food Waste. This report was published at the end of 2021, and it details the environmental impacts of food waste, starting with production up and including consumers. It will be followed by a report coming out, we hope later this year, that details the environmental impacts of food waste management through a life cycle analysis and circularity lens. So a product that we're really looking forward to sharing as soon as possible. Okay, next. And then just the last focus area is just about supporting policies through our networks and collaboration internally and externally. So in the next few slides, I'll just highlight some of those partnerships and collaborations that we at the Environmental Protection Agency have been working with. So next, internally within EPA, we have food representatives across all 10 of our EPA regions to form the base of our internal network. We also facilitate peer networks with state and local governments on related topics. And then our federal interagency collaboration, which I'll talk about next, also has a joint agreement with ReFed, one of the leaders in this space. Next. Our federal interagency collaboration with USDA and FDA started in the fall of 2018 with a formal agreement, and we renewed it at the end of 2020. Individually and collectively, these three agencies are working toward reducing food loss and waste. And the actions include research, community investments, education and outreach, voluntary programs, public-private partnerships, tool development, technical assistance, and event participation, such as this one that you are enjoying now. Next. We also partner with the private sector to recognize leaders and advance innovative solutions to reduce food waste. EPA works with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to recognize the U.S. Food Loss and Waste 2030 champions. These champions are food businesses which have publicly committed to reduce food loss and waste in their own U.S. operations in half by 2030. Currently, we have 47 champions, and they represent a range of food businesses, including food processors, retail chains, and hotel and hospitality chains. In a separate effort, together with the United Nations Environment Program, EPA is partnering with the Pacific Coast Collaborative and the Consumer Goods Forum to scale and streamline measurement, test interventions, and increase awareness. Next. And then EPA, with support from other agencies, we continue to collaborate with the Group of 7 countries, the Group of 20, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and the Commission for Environmental Cooperation to exchange best practices for reducing food waste and for measuring progress. This is a huge opportunity for improvement, and we can do more with these partnerships and collaboration. So next, I look forward to hearing more from my other colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lana. That was a really interesting presentation, and I loved all the different solutions there and the options that EPA has to offer. And I've learned something new every day about food loss and waste. I've been doing this for a long time. Before I introduce our next presenter, who's somebody I actually know quite well, I want to note that I think I counted correctly. I think we have 35 countries plus the United States represented here. I'll just quickly run through them, but if you haven't put where you're from and who you're representing, please do so in the chat. So we have South Sudan, this is in no order, Nepal, Ghana, Tanzania, Senegal, Guatemala, Liberia, Germany, Nigeria, Brazil, Gambia, Bangladesh, India, Malawi, Uganda, Zambia, I do Zambia twice, Gabon, Ethiopia, Kenya, Cambodia, Sweden, Pakistan, South Africa, the Philippines, Burundi, Mozambique, Benin, Israel, Mexico, Madagascar, Cameroon, Myanmar, and Mali. So I hope that between the 35 countries that are on this, we can come together with some serious food loss and waste solutions. So without further ado, let me introduce my colleague, Jean Busby, who's a senior advisor at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I've worked with Jean Busby before, and she is an economist from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and there's a lot going on there. So over to you, Jean. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. It's my pleasure to be here to share what USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, is doing in terms of programs, policy, and guidance to reduce food loss and waste. My position as the Food Loss and Waste Liaison, by the way, was created in the 2018 Farm Bill. Next slide, please. I like to think of USDA's activities in this space in 4 main categories: program funding, research and research funding, outreach, and regulatory guidance. I'm going to go through these one by one and share examples. I do want to mention that in June 2022, USDA announced that we would be investing substantially in food loss and waste reduction. Next slide. And that investment is using the American Rescue Plan Act funds. The first thing that we did was we invested $30 million in plussing up the composting and food waste reduction cooperative agreements out of our Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production. These cooperative agreements are plussed up over 3 years, and local municipal governments and school districts are eligible to apply. And essentially, these fund the development and testing of strategies to implement municipal compost plans and/or food waste reduction plans. For example, in Prescott, Arizona, one project is collecting restaurant and household food scraps for composting to make a valuable soil amendment and keep those food scraps out of landfills. Next slide. Another exciting investment that we just announced last Wednesday is the funding of $25 million to support selected programs out of USDA's National Institute of Food or Agriculture, or NIFA. That press release I'll put later in the chat after I finish presenting. And in particular, that press release also announced of this amount of $500,000 of awards for the first two programs here, which I'll go by one. The first is the Community Food Projects, or CFP. That's a competitive grants program, which is really aimed to develop these linkages between food producers, providers, and food recovery organizations to get wholesome food to those in need. And for example, one of the new awardees is in Honolulu, Hawaii, and that is kind of expanding the storage capacity to allow really upscaling or plus up of food rescue to really get the food to those in need. These awardees also, there were awardees also announced in the Food and Agriculture Service Learning Program, or FASLP, and this program uses school grounds to engage students in a learning environment and really educate them about food loss and waste. And one awardee that was announced in FASLP is in Connecticut, and that's and in that project, students will be taught strategies to reduce food loss and waste, and they'll also help glean wholesome food from farms and local farms and get those to food banks. So that's very exciting work. This announcement will also include forthcoming food loss and waste efforts in collaboration with the National 4-H Council and NIFA's Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program, which is operating in all states as well as every island protectorate. Next slide, please. We also have the Emergency Food Assistance Program, or TFAP, has a farm to food bank projects, and the 2018 Farm Bill provided funding of $4 million per year for this set of projects. And essentially, they aim to reduce food waste at the agricultural production, processing, or distribution level by increasing the donation of wholesome food. And next slide. I want to mention that USDA is a large agency with around 29 agencies and offices, and we do a wide range of work from farm to table. And some of our programs prioritize food loss and waste reduction as the #1 priority, and many other programs have different priorities, but also have a food loss and waste component, or food loss and waste reduction activities can be part of those projects. And here are 3 examples. Our Rural Energy for America program, a REAP, that supports anaerobic digesters, many of which handle manure on farms. But some of them, these anaerobic digesters that are funded, also incorporate food scraps as input. We also have Farm Storage Facility Loan Program, which provides low interest financing so producers can build or upgrade facilities to store commodities. For example, these kinds of activities can increase the shelf life, such as cold storage for produce. We also have the Local Agriculture Marketing Program, or LAMP, which is really several different programs combined. And a portion of these touch on food loss and waste reduction activities, such as
Jean?
Right. Yes.
Jean, I have a question. There seems to be some echo with you. Are you?
Oh, right. Thank you, Jocelyn. I'll try and move closer to the microphone and speak a little bit more slowly. My apologies. I do not have a headset here today.
No worries.
So we'll just try and slow down a bit.
Good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sure. So anyway, I really just want to emphasize that we touch on food loss and waste in a range of programs and so forth. Next slide.
Hi, Jean, really quick, in between these slides, could we do a quick the solution that we had worked on earlier, just to quickly resolve the audio? It's okay to just pause for 1 minute.
All right. So do you want me to leave and get back in?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.
Just 1 minute. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Just a little bit of troubleshooting, and we will be back on track in just a second.
And a little filler for you. We've added Bolivia, Zimbabwe, St. Lucia, Italy, Cameroon, and Tunisia as our list of countries. So I'm counting now up to 40. So if I've not called your country, oh, I see the DRC, so 41. So if I've not called your country, if you've not introduced yourself in the chat, we have 335 people listening in, but I don't think we have 335 introductions. So if you could put your name in the chat. And I also think, Michael, you've agreed that you will share the video of this as well as the slides. There's a lot of questions about that.
Yes, we will be sharing the recording of the full event as well as the full slide deck with everyone who registered. So no need to worry about that. And Jean, it looks like, has rejoined.
Is she back?
So yes, I am. Do you still hear echo?
It's better. I think the closer you get to your computer, the better.
I could also unplug this one camera and see if it's better. Actually, I might try that.
Okay.
Okay.
Give it a shot.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's fine with both your camera on and off, but the closer you get to your computer, the better you sound.
Okay, great. And all right, thank you so much. I'm sorry for this technological interruption here, but back to what I'm going to share is another component of USDA activities is research and research funding. And here are just a few examples. It's not comprehensive. We do have research in other agencies as well. But I wanted to point out three in particular. Our Agricultural Research Service, or ARS, part of their portfolio is to conduct research that involves food loss and waste reduction. This research is primarily conducted through ARS bench scientists in our labs across the country, although they also do extramural funding as well. And ARS has come up with their partners with really neat innovations, such as an automated infield apple sorting system, which reduces bruising damage and at higher speeds and is more efficient. ARS also develops cultivars that have longer shelf life and remain flavorful and have other good attributes. Our National Institute of Food and Agriculture, or NIFA, which I mentioned before, that's USDA's premier or main funding agency for extramural funding. And they've come up with great innovations as well with their partners, such as Jelly Ice, which is an ice substitute out of UC Davis. And this ice substitute is made with natural materials, can be reused up to 10 or 12 times, and then ultimately composted. Next slide. Another bucket of our work is our outreach. We provide information and serve as a resource for all sorts of entities engaged in food loss and waste reduction and food recovery, and really on a wide range of topics, including the liability protections afforded to businesses who donate food. And we have these materials reach all different kinds of audiences from farm to table. And some of these materials are translated in additional languages to expand outreach. In the past few years, we have also hosted roundtables, one of which was with FAO North America. And these roundtables are available on demand, both on the USDA YouTube channel, as well as our own website, which I'll put in the chat later on as well. Next slide. In the past several years, we have also hosted 2 USDA food loss and waste innovation fairs. These virtual fairs have had 3 main exhibit halls. The first highlights some of the work by U.S. Food Loss and Waste 2030 champions. That is the public-private partnership that Lana mentioned that we have with EPA. We also have an exhibit hall where USDA agencies are sharing what they do on food loss and waste. And the third type of exhibit hall is really highlighting those innovations coming out of our USDA funding. I do want to mention that the last innovation fair is still available on demand for free by just adding your website, and then you can download all sorts of materials. Next slide. I do want to mention one tool that we have is the Food Keeper app. This free tool provides guidance on safe handling, preparation, and storage of over 650 food and beverage items. This app can also help users set calendar reminders to remind them when something is nearing their recommended storage date, and it provides all sorts of helpful videos. Next slide. The fourth category of our work is regulatory guidance. For example, our Food Safety and Inspection Service provides guidance on food product date labeling. Studies have shown that consumer confusion about food date labels have led to food being discarded prematurely. Both the FSIS and FDA recommend the best if used by date. FSIS also provides guidance on the donation of eligible meat and poultry products to nonprofit organizations. Next slide. Some of the takeaway messages that I want to emphasize, and it builds on earlier comments made by Jocelyn, Ahmed, and Mana, is that in the US and globally, we have a really long way to go to reduce food loss and waste impacts by 2030. USDA is investing and taking action to prevent, reduce, and repurpose food loss and waste, but this is an enormous task. And food loss and waste is complex when you think of from all the ways that food loss and waste occurs from farm to table. It's going to take many, many different solutions from farm to table. And these will include public-private partnerships, such as some of the ones that have been mentioned today. And I really want to emphasize that everyone has a role to play in reducing food loss and waste. Next slide. I'm happy to share my slides. Feel free also to reach out to me if you have follow-up questions after this webinar. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jean, and thank you for bearing with us as we work through the audio visuals. And thanks to all of our listeners and participants for that as well. Last, but certainly not least, is my colleague Priya Kadam from the Food and Drug Administration Office of Food Safety, who also has experience in the Food Safety and Inspection Service at USDA. So Priya, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity to present FDA's collaboration on reducing food loss and waste. Next, please. I will give a brief overview on how food safety and food reduction of food loss and waste goes hand in hand. Talk a little bit on food donation, date labels, and consumer education. Next, please. Let us begin with FDA's mission. FDA's mission is to protect public health by ensuring that foods are safe, wholesome, sanitary, and properly labeled. FDA regulates 75% of food products, while meat, poultry, egg products, and catfish is regulated by Department of Agriculture, Food Safety, and Inspection Services. In addition to 75% of food products, FDA also regulates dietary supplements, bottled water, food additives, and infant formula. Next slide, please. As Lana and Jean mentioned about the interagency formal agreement that has been signed between FDA with USDA and EPA. And this is just a quick timeline as to how these agreements are 3 years and they get renewed every 3 years. And we are committed to collaborate. FDA is committed to collaborate with USDA and with EPA on reducing food loss and waste. Whenever appropriate, educate actors throughout the supply chain on best practices to reduce food loss and waste. So as you can see, we had the first one was signed in 2018, renewed in 2020, and it's now due for another renewal this year. In addition, FDA, USDA, and EPA has signed MOU with ReFed, which is a nonprofit organization, which is dedicated to ending food loss and waste. Next slide, please. Let me first begin like how food safety and reducing food loss and waste goes hand in hand. Improperly processed products of food sometimes enters commerce, and that food always gets recalled and ends in landfill. It's wasted. In 2011, Congress passed the Food Safety Modernization Act, which modernized and transformed food safety programs in the United States by shifting the focus from responding to foodborne illnesses to preventing it. Now, proper implementation of processing measures will make sure that the food is safe in the commerce. However, sometimes there is a deviation. And when that occurs, the food can be diverted to animal food, it can be reworked. And if it's surplus, then it can be donated. Next slide, please. When it comes to surplus food and donation, let me talk about how FDA encourages food donation as long as food safety practices are followed. And this was included in 2022 Food Code. I'll talk about Food Code in my next slide, just to give you a background on what is Food Code. Including food donations section in Food Code was giving a message that FDA encourages food donation. It also supported President Biden's national strategy for hunger, nutrition, and health, which was released in conjunction with the first White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health last September. Next slide, please. So talking about what is Food Code, it's a model code, and FDA assists state, local, tribal, and territorial regulatory bodies to either accept the food safety regulations in the Food Code, in the model Food Code, or to update their own food safety rules. These is mostly focused on regulating retail and food services like restaurants, grocery stores. So having this section in the 10th edition of Food Code on food donation was one of the big accomplishments of FDA, which showed encouragement towards food donation. Next slide, please. As I said in the previous slides, that if there is a process deviation, the food can be reworked or diverted to animal food. Of course, the animal food has to be safe too. In FDA, Food and Drug Administration, FDA, we have a Center for Veterinary Medicines, and they have a regulatory, they make ensure that the animal food is safe. And so they publish guidance documents, which are on our website. And when you get this presentation, if you click on those, it will take you to those guidance documents, which talks about helping the industry on how to ensure the human food byproducts are diverted to animal food or feed, and how to ensure that it's safe. Next slide, please. Food packaging also plays a very important role in reducing food loss and waste by preserving the nutritional value and freshness of food that is transported over long distances or stored for extended periods of time. FDA has a mandatory pre-market food contact notification program. And our experts, they review the safety material used in food packaging. They also publish guidance documents for the industry on chemistry to be considered for the food contact substances, recycled material. They are also in a process of updating guidance documents, which will reflect new market trends for food packaging, assist manufacturers to further enhance the effectiveness of traditional packaging, develop innovative new products such as biodegradable package, which allows packaged food still in the container to be directed to composting rather than to the landfill. Next slide, please. Antimicrobials are used in food production to help reduce food loss at production facilities by reducing potential for cross-contamination before packaging and shipping. FDA has a mandatory pre-market food contact notification program, and our experts review safety of antimicrobials used in food processing. There are guidance on microbiological consideration and antimicrobial food additives on our website. Next slide, please. Here I'll talk about the new rule that FDA passed on food traceability, which was passed last November. The goal of this rule is to facilitate faster identification and rapid removal of contaminated food from commerce. The goal is also to quickly and accurately pinpoint contaminated food product and remove it from the marketplace, which can help to reduce food loss and waste associated with such events. Next slide, please. What does this rule have? It establishes additional traceability record-keeping requirements for those that manufacture, process, pack, or hold certain foods on FDA's food traceability list. It identifies key activities or critical tracking events along the supply chain, where records containing key data elements will have to be created, maintained, and shared for these foods. The key data elements will include lot codes. Next slide, please. How is this going to help the food manufacturers? So that it will optimize handling, routing, and storage, improve inventory and supply chain management, expedite and initiation and completion of recalls. Due to this standardized approach to traceability, which will also provide not only to ensure that safe food is in commerce, but also to reduce food loss and waste. Next slide, please. So I spoke about the Food Safety Modernization Act, where it modernized the food safety system in the United States by shifting the focus from responding to preventing foodborne illnesses. So that was at manufacturing and producing food production. Then I spoke about the food code, which is more at the retail and food services, ensuring that food is safe by helping and assisting state, local, and tribal territorial regulators on ensuring that food at the retail and food services restaurants is safe, encouraging food donation if there is surplus food. And now the third part, I'll talk about how FDA has consumer education material, how to educate consumers on reducing food loss and waste, at the same time ensuring that the food is safe. We have several animations, infographics, and information on our websites for consumer education. To give you an example, ugly fruits or vegetables that often get left behind at the grocery store are safe to eat. There are only physical imperfections, but are not damaged or rotten, unless you can see that there is a foul smell or they look spoiled, then you don't eat it. Other way of reducing food loss and waste is follow the nutritional facts labels to help portion your meals. Next slide, please. Here I'm going to talk about date labeling, and Jean spoke about how date labeling can cause confusion with consumers, and 20% of food gets wasted. And it's not surprising with so many variety of terms with date labels such as use before, sell by, expires on, that just creates confusion. FDA supports best if used by, just like USDA, Jean mentioned. We had published a letter in 2019 to the industry supporting best if used by. Next slide, please. There is no federal law or regulation to have quality-based date labels on packaged food, except for infant formula. We do work with congressional staff on improving the bill text on Food Date Labeling Act of 2021, which has not passed yet, but we work with them to give our message that FDA supports best if used by. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, FDA's mission is to protect public health from foodborne illnesses. And in our consumer messages, we make sure that food loss and waste message is incorporated into food safety. Again, food safety and reducing food loss waste goes hand in hand. And these are some of the examples on the slide: proper storage of food, freezing and refrigerating food. Following the 2-hour rule, don't leave perishable foods out at room temperatures for more than 2 hours. Check the freezer temperature, check the refrigeration temperature. And these are all the information that you will find on our FDA website. Thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. If you have any suggestions, questions, please contact me at my email address. Thank you. Jocelyn, thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. I can't undo my video for some reason. So I can't hear me, but I wanted to make sure that everyone knows that concludes our presenters, but we have some time for Q&A. Before we do that, though, I wanted to acknowledge that we also have participants from Afghanistan, Bhutan on, as well as the Native Mohawk Nation. So I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that. Before we turn to questions, I want to make sure everyone realizes there's a Q&A section down at the bottom. There are already a lot of questions there already. And I'm going to try to be even-handed here and make sure that everyone gets a question. I might say also that that I will do, if we have time, I'd like to do a quick lightning round at the end of a myth that you would like to bust around food loss and waste from my presenters. So if we have time, and you can think about it while we're asking other questions about what myth would you like to bust about food loss and waste. I'm going to start with Ahmed. This is a question from Catherine Alston saying, I'm interested in hearing more about the private sector partnerships that you mentioned, Ahmed. Would love to hear more about them and what is the shared value for the private sector, especially those who are contributing funds towards scaling up food loss mitigation methods. And I'm going to add, sort of combine this question with another question is, what role does the private sector have in the food loss and waste area? And that may be a little bit broader, that could spill over into USDA and FDA and EPA as well. But Ahmed, let's start with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Jocelyn, and thank you for the question. For the public-private partnership or the food loss and waste partnership facility that we established, it is a targeted investment in feed the future upstandard countries that I mentioned. Upstandard countries, those are USAID missions that are operating in Bangladesh, Nepal, Nigeria, Niger, Tanzania, and Kenya. They signed a memo saying that they recognize food loss and waste as an issue, and they will try to do their best to address food loss and waste. And when we identified resources centrally from USAID, and these resources came under the Ukraine, especially Ukraine funding to address global food security issues, we established a food loss and waste partnership in these countries. And this can also identify countries with the highest, that are highly impacted by the Ukraine war or the Russian invasion to Ukraine, from the fertilizer and or grain trade, as you know. So we established this partnership with one condition: private sector partnership companies can apply to it with a one-to-one co-investment. In other words, for every dollar they are requesting from USAID, they have to put $1 equal or more. And at the same time, we are focusing on nutritious agricultural products that are by nature perishable as well. The two companies that we partner with them, of course, we reviewed them and through a rigorous process. We put them through a special and pre-announced, pre-identified evaluation criteria. We gave special attention and priority to women-owned, women-led, women in majority employing, as well as youth companies, because if we want to look at those who the untapped potential in development in our partner countries, these are this society or this group, women and youth. The first wave, we announced it. We are in the process of finalizing 3 more partnerships, and we are reviewing now, finalizing the review for the second wave of the food loss and waste partnership facility. If there is a new opportunities for funding, and we are always seeking resources from central resources, and as well as partnering with other donors, philanthropists, angel investors, to amplify the work that we do on food loss and waste through partnership with the private sector. Why private sector? We know there is, as we all know, there is a lot of questions that need to be answered via research, and we have special research funding stream for that. But at the same time, we have knowledge and technologies and ideas that can be scaled today that can have a significant impact at reducing food loss and waste, either preventing food loss and waste from getting to end up in landfills, such as upcycling and food banking, etc. And we have the food banking network as part of our food loss and waste community practice. And I'm sure our colleagues from the domestic agency can speak about food banking and food donation programs. But also we are trying to encourage these things in our country, and or organic waste management, preventing food from ending in landfill, rotting, and contributing to significant side effect. The organic waste management by itself is an income generating activities that support income opportunities for youth, women, and everyone beyond, and also bring about applying climate smart circular economy approaches that will create sustainable feed and or supporting or soil fertility or replacement of fertilizer, etc. That is, I think, why the private sector, finally, just to your add-on, Jocelyn, I think regardless how much government and public sector try to do, without partnering and harnessing the resources of the private sector, we will not be able to achieve our target and objective, whether it is improving nutrition, economic development, reducing food loss and waste, and beyond. We need the private sector to be our partner and work hand by hand with us in order to achieve this and to sustainably leave them carry on these activities without the need for it. We are just using our resources from USAID side to leverage the resources and to start some work or to de-risk their investment. And then hopefully all of this partnership will be on their own way to success after the end of our partnership, which is a 2-year partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. And also, let's not forget collectively that each farmer, no matter how much he, she, they farm, whether it's half an hectare or 100,000 acres, each one of them is a private sector entity. So, of course, inherently, food loss and waste has to start with the private sector because it starts with the farmer, who is inherently a private sector entity. My next question goes to Lana. How is the EPA working with, to reduce the food waste at the landfill? Do you produce biogas for buses or cars, or what incentive do you have to use this waste better? Is there something you can help us with that? What do we do with all this waste?
Well, a lot of waste, like I said, is going to landfills, and many of those landfills do have gas capture systems in place once they're closed to be able to capture that biogas that's being produced. But what the message that I was trying to share is about the prevention, because the food that goes on the journey from the field to your plate into the garbage and then is managed in some way is losing and decomposing that entire trip a little by little. So there's a lot of greenhouse gases that are emitted on that journey that the food takes, just getting to the landfill. So then once it's in the landfill, yes, there is an opportunity to capture that biogas, but it's not the complete picture of what that food is emitting on that journey, if that makes sense. But there are ways to capture it in landfills with systems in place, but that usually takes place once the landfill is closed to make sure that it's sealed. If you think of like a big plastic bag, you put all of that food inside of it and it really contains and tries to capture as much of that gas as possible. But a lot of it is emitted on the journey to get there. But those systems that are in place and successful are able to redirect that biogas and use it as an energy source and convert it in different ways. So there is opportunity to use the biogas.
So the message there is, by the time we're throwing the food away, it's already created some greenhouse gas emissions, and that's sort of capturing the biogas should be in some ways the last resort. Right?
Yes, correct.
Right. Got it. This question is actually for both, maybe for you. Well, it could be for EPA, it could be for USDA, it could be for FDA. So I'll let whoever would like to kind of hit at it first. But hold on, I've lost the question. It has to do with the slide that you put up, Lana, around the 40% of households that food loss and waste comes from 40% from households and 28% from restaurants. So that's to put together 68%, almost 70% of food loss and waste is happening at the household or the restaurant level. how do we track this? What measures can be taken to address this? And I think this might be something across all agencies, but I'll start with you, Lana, for that one.
Sure, thank you. I mean, our data comes from a variety of sources. We're not going into individual homes. We get large, and look at it household by household. We get large data sets and create those estimates. And we have hundreds of pages of methodology that's behind our wasted food report for anyone who wants to dig into that a little bit further. But food waste is being generated at the household level. It's a large percentage of then what is being managed after it leaves the home. A lot of it is going to landfills, and it's being produced because of improper storage, maybe lack of planning, impulse buying when you go to the store and you see something on sale, but you really don't have an intention on what you're going to put that in, or a recipe that you can use for a whole plant, root to stem. There's a lot of learning that we can do to help us better prepare in our own kitchens, better store, eat those leftovers, repurpose meals, be creative, learn how to cook again. There's a lot of strategies that we can use in our own households to avoid putting that food waste in the trash can and avoid that as much as possible.
Jean or Mia, did you want to add to that?
Sure, I'd love to add a few things. I do want to point out that on our USDA Food Loss and Waste website, which I put in the chat, we do have a consumer page that provides all sorts of tips. Another one could be having leftovers on a certain day of the week, or when you go and eat out, to take food back home and have it as a meal later. So there are many different ways that consumers can reduce their own food waste. I used to, when I was at the Economic Research Service, I estimated that a family of 4 in the U.S. Spent $1,500 a year on food that goes uneaten. So it really adds up, and by reducing food waste, we can keep that money in our own pockets.
What I like about this percentage, not that 40% of households are contributing to food loss and waste, that's not the part that I like. What I like about it is that there's a feeling that there's an individual power over this. I think in the climate change discussions, I certainly feel as an individual a little bit like overwhelmed by, there's only so much I can do. And in the food loss and waste area, it sounds like there is really individual power over what people can do, whether it's, use the food when it's fresh and available, and not throw it into the garbage. Make sure you refrigerate it quickly. Priya, you did a lot of things. Do you want to add to that, Priya, to this discussion at all, or would you prefer that I pivot to a different question for you?
Just a quick, as I said, FDA has done a great job on consumer education and outreach to keep the food safe, and also to see how they can ensure that the food is not wasted. Date labeling is the other thing, is because we know there is a confusion, and FDA has supports best if used by. So those are some things which can help consumers to understand how they can reduce food loss and waste at home. Thank you.
So we've spoken a little bit about, or we've spent some time on food waste just now. I want to go back to Ahmed, because there are quite a number of things that USAID is doing in collaboration, I would say, with USDA, EPA, and FDA on the food loss, at the production. Could you described a number of them in your presentation. There's a number of questions here, particularly about how do we help countries understand how important this is. So for example, there's a question from Sri Lanka about how do you socialize the importance of this issue. Any bright thoughts there, Hamid, on how to get governments and communities to understand the importance of this?
Yeah, thank you. This is an important question. And the issue of pre and post-harvest losses. So pre-harvest, we are covering from some of the research looking at how can we prevent the yield gap anything that could damage crops in the field or affect the productivity. Soil health is one of those factors that affected climate, of course, water, etc., and all the way to the farm gate, when the food is leaving the farm gate and now it is handed off from the farmer, who are also a business, as you indicate, Jocelyn, to the either retailers or the consumer, etc. That's when food waste will start. That's, I think, the distinction as defined by several agencies, including USDA and FAO and EPA. Now, we are trying to work on multiple fronts. Research, creating evidence, identifying the gaps. You're trying to identify within the value chain where the losses are happening in the major part. Are they happening? Recent discussion with FAO Chief Economist Maximo. He mentioned some of the data coming. Some of the losses are happening on in the drying stage, not in the storage stage. Not that storage is not important, but drying now, we need to dry grains and dry crops appropriately to the appropriate moisture point before we store them in the hermetic storage or the secure storage. That will continue the process of protecting crop from being lost. We need to gather all this evidence supported with a strong data behind it. And that is one of the issue that we have as a global community. Not that we don't have a standard food loss and waste protocols, collection protocols, but there is a lack of following these protocols and a lack of sticking to a standard data collections and way of collecting data, and country level data is a major gap that we have. Having strong data from country level, on the value chain level, and each crop, that will support the global community and in their advocacy and in their policy recommendation. We need also our partner from each country, from the research community, from the civil society organization, from the community themselves, to raise their voices about why we need to address food loss and waste. It's important for ensuring food safety. So strengthening food safety systems is a way to ensure food is not lost or wasted. Food is not considered as unsafe when it is completely safe. Sometimes that misconception, and my colleagues from USDA and EPA and FDA touched on the use by, better by, best by, expiry date, all of these things. But in the pre-harvest stage, we need advocacy. We need policies and actionable recommendations for policymakers in order to prioritize pre- and post-harvest losses, and to work on them to prioritize resources, because we have a big problem and limited resources, from whether we are looking at it from donor organization, philanthropists, or host nations. There is limited resources to work on, to act on these things. But we need really the voices from everyone. Whether the data that from the Sri Lanka, how the data that we produce from Nigeria, Bangladesh, and Niger, and Kenya, could be applicable to Sri Lanka, I'm pretty sure they are. If you take this data and you try to do some research and modeling, follow the FPRI model, you will find similar data in terms of the impact, not only on GDP, but also on food prices and affordability and nutrition outcomes, as well as overall health outcomes and climate impact. As you know, food loss and waste has social impact as well as climate and environmental impact that we need to address both of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. Very, very much. There is a very important comment by Pushparaja Tavaraja, who states that food waste responsibility at individual varies with economic status. The poorest may not have anything to waste at individual level versus the economically rich, and I could not agree with you more. Unfortunately, it's the richer, more industrialized countries which have, I think, greater probably per capita food waste. Really quickly, very quickly, 10 seconds. Myth bust. What myth would you like to bust? I'll start with you, Ahmed, because you're on the screen. 10 seconds. Is there anything you'd like to bust?
Food loss and waste is a solvable problem. It is not something we cannot achieve or solve. We can eliminate or come to close to zero food loss and waste.
We can do that, is what you're saying. Okay.
Yes, we can. It can be.
We can do it. Lana.
I would say if it looks good and it smells good, you could probably eat it.
Okay.
Regardless of what the date says.
Okay. Priya.
Keep your food safe. That is important, and that will definitely reduce food loss and waste.
And Jean, I'm going to turn to you, but try to come close to your computer.
Yeah, not really a myth, but I think a lot of individuals don't think they waste much, that they're better than average, but because they only waste a little per day. But over the course of a year, it really adds up. And by both individuals and businesses looking at what they waste, they can really see what could be achieved and how to save money.
Well, it's certainly given me a lot of food for thought, no pun intended. And I have to say, we didn't even touch on pets. I'll tell you, in my household, my cat is the biggest food waster of all because she's incredibly picky and she's incredibly old, so I indulge her a lot. But I think we all have something to learn. I want to thank everyone for being with us. I want to thank USAID for asking me to moderate this and for bringing us all together. And with that, I think we are at time. So I will maybe turn it back to you, Michael, or any closing thoughts you want me to say? We good?
No, just thank you so much, everybody, for joining. This is a wonderful event. Jocelyn, you did a great job moderating, and please continue the discussion over on AgriLinks. I've posted the link to our theme month collection. So please go take a look at all the wonderful blogs that have been posted on this topic, and we'll see you guys next month.
Thank you. And I want to just add that Greece just joined us. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.